Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Pakistan says the United States might lose Islamabad as a key ally if Washington does not warm up to its leadership. In an interview, National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf said if America sees a security relationship as a concession, Pakistan has options. Yusuf disapproved of Washington's mixed and confusing signals at a time when it acknowledges Pakistan's make-or-break role in the Afghan peace process. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says the Taliban are demanding the lion's share of power in any new government. In an interview, he said that a political agreement is the only way to solve the war and end the violence in the country. Meanwhile, in a call with President Ashraf Ghani, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken underscored Washington's commitment to Afghanistan. Iran has denounced the reports of its involvement in maritime incidents and hijacking in the Gulf area. A spokesperson for Iran's armed forces said that the incidents are psychological warfare to set the stage for new bouts of adventurism. This comes as Britain's Maritime Trade Agency reported a potential hack in the Persian Gulf. Brazil's daily coronavirus deaths and cases have increased sharply again as it recorded over 1,200 fatalities overnight. The Latin American state reported over 32,000 new infections in a day. Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered 46 new deaths and over 4,700 infections in the last 24 hours. Globally, the death toll has surpassed 4.2 million with more than 199 million infections. And in the Tokyo Olympics, Pakistan's Arshad Nadeem makes history by directly qualifying for the final of the javelin throw competition. Meanwhile, Sydney McLaughlin of the United States has smashed her own world record to claim gold in the women's 400-meter hurdles. China leads with 32 gold medals, followed by the United States at 25 and Japan at 20. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. Pakistan says the United States might lose Islamabad as a key ally if Washington does not warm up to its leadership. In an interview, National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf said if America sees a security relationship as a concession, Pakistan has options. Yusuf disapproved Washington's mixed and confusing signaling at a time when it acknowledges Pakistan's make-or-break role in the Afghan peace process. Answering a question, Yusuf dispelled the notion of a civil-military disconnect in Pakistan. The National Security Advisor termed his recent meeting with his American counterpart, Jake Sullivan, constructive. For more on this, we are joined by Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador to the United States. Mr. Naqvi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, Mr. Naqvi, National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf has said that Pakistan has other options if U.S. President Joe Biden continues to ignore the country's leadership. What options does Pakistan have?
You see, that is a manner of speaking. The options are already there, which we are exercising, which means that we have the support of the regional countries. Both the major powers of this region are Russia and China. With each of them, we have very good relations. And then we have friendship with bilateral relationship with Turkey and with Malaysia and various other countries in the Middle East and beyond. So there are options that Pakistan has which it is exercising. But at the same time, Pakistan would like to remain engaged with the United States which is a global power and with which Pakistan has had a very long and fruitful relationship.
Mr. Naqvi, so do you believe Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's flat-out refusal to be part of any military operations in Afghanistan has upset Washington?
Yeah, well, actually, you see, these things are not done in this manner. There are media declarations and announcements, but there can't be any precondition to a meaningful bilateral relationship. And what Prime Minister Imran Khan has said is in the context of Pakistan's national interest is quite right. However, Pakistan will look for a relationship with the United States to remain engaged and to work on regional issues, bilateral issues with the United States.
Mr. Naqvi, so the United States has shifted its strategy and policy objectives multiple times in Afghanistan. How much of the current mess in Afghanistan is Washington's responsibility?
A lot. I think a lot of it is the responsibility of the United States, because the United States waged a long war in Afghanistan along with a whole set of allies and friends from where it obtained troops, like NATO countries and elsewhere. And it did not achieve the objectives that it had laid out. To fight the Taliban and to prevent them from coming to power. B, to fight Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And C, help Afghan society emerge in its own right as a well-developed and functional society. So all these objectives were not achieved, and therefore the responsibility of the United States is for failure on all these counts.
Mr. Ali Sarwar Naqvi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says that the Taliban are demanding the lion's share of power in any new government. In an interview, he said that a political agreement is the only way to solve the war and end the violence in the country. The U.S. envoy warned of a protracted war if the Afghan government and the Taliban focus on a military solution to end hostilities. Khalilzad said both sides should focus on finding a formula for the formation of a new government that is acceptable to all parties. Meanwhile, in a call with President Ashraf Ghani, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken underscored Washington's commitment to Afghanistan. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said both sides emphasized the need to accelerate peace negotiations and achieve a political settlement. The call comes as the Taliban press their offensive against government forces in Herat, Lashkargah, and Kandahar. Meanwhile, a car bomb attack occurred near the residence of Acting Defense Minister General Bismillah Mohammadi in Kabul, killing 4 people. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called for solidarity among Muslim states to support the Palestinian and Kashmir issues. In a meeting with visiting Arab Parliament's delegation, Khan stressed the importance of resolving these long-standing disputes. The Prime Minister said the Palestine and Kashmir issues are 2 of the root causes of disaffection in the Muslim world. He said that these issues must be resolved as per the UN Security Council and Organization of Islamic Cooperation's resolutions. He added that Muslim countries need to act collectively to counter growing Islamophobia in different parts of the world. Iran has denounced the reports of its involvement in maritime incidents and hijacking in the Gulf area. A spokesperson for Iran's armed forces says that these events are psychological warfare to set the stage for new bouts of adventurism. More in this report. Tensions have escalated in the narrow shipping lanes of the Persian Gulf since Thursday's drone attack on an Israeli-managed tanker. Now, Britain, Romania, and Liberia say it was highly likely that Iran used drones to attack the tanker. In a letter to the UN Security Council, the country said that the global community must condemn the attack that violated international laws. Meanwhile, the British officials have reported a potential hijack of a ship off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. Iran's military says Tehran is ready to provide any naval assistance needed. The spokesperson said if foreign vessels request, Iran can dispatch relief units. Allotting to the report, the Saudi foreign minister said emboldened Iran is acting in a negative manner and endangering shipping. Earlier, 6 oil tankers in the sea between the UAE and Iran updated their tracking status to not under command. We're taking you live to the Kashmir conference where the foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is currently speaking.
Has done nothing to bring even an iota of relief to the Kashmiris. But it gets worse. India is trying to eliminate Kashmiris altogether. Young men disappearing without a trace. New domicile rules and land laws have been thrust upon the Kashmiris to re-engineer Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's demography. In its delusion of grandeur, India expected the world, and more pertinently Pakistan, to acquiesce. But ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan, guided by the clarity of Prime Minister Imran Khan's vision, stood its ground. Under the Prime Minister's directions, I had the honor to focus the Foreign Ministry's efforts on rousing the international community. I'm happy to note that our efforts have not been in vain. The Security Council has discussed the Jammu and Kashmir dispute thrice since August 2019. World leaders, parliamentarians, media, humanists, and civil society at large have understood that beyond the smokescreen of Indian sophistry lies Kashmir's perpetual nightmare. So, ladies and gentlemen, the question is, what do we do? I didn't touch anything. The question is, what do we do? The government of Pakistan is absolutely clear that we will continue to lend moral, political, and diplomatic support to Kashmiris. Accordingly, insinuations and allegations questioning our sincerity are simply malicious. As for the international community, it must continue to exhort India to treat Kashmiris like human beings. India should rescind its unilateral actions and all related instruments of oppressions and state terrorism. It must respect UN Security Council resolutions and let the Kashmiris exercise their right to self-determination. This, ladies and gentlemen, will pull out the dagger which rankles in the heart of bilateral and regional peace and bodes ill for international peace and security. It will unlock the potential of South Asia. Pakistan wants to shift focus from geopolitics to geoeconomics. We want peace with India, but not at the expense of the Kashmiris. We hope the Indian leadership will prefer statesmanship over populism. We hope we can, together, weaken the extremist narrative through a genuine Pacific settlement of a festering dispute. Rest assured, Imran Khan's government will not be found wanting. I thank you.
That was the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, speaking at a Kashmir seminar in Islamabad, where he reiterated Pakistan's stand on Kashmir, stating that the Kashmiris must obtain their right to self-determination, and as per the UN Security Council resolutions, Kashmir should be given its right to self-determination. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Saudi Arabia says it will support a U.S.-Iran deal if it ensures that Iran will never gain access to nuclear weapons technology. Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud made these remarks to a U.S. think tank in a webinar. Prince Faisal said that Iran must give up its nuclear program, which can be used to develop nukes. The Saudi foreign minister also welcomed the U.S.'s intentions of reaching a deal with Iran. He said the potential pact will address Iran's ballistic missile program and its alleged support for militias. Prince Faisal said that Iran needs to stop supporting militias in order to play a positive role in the region and for its economy. He said Riyadh will very much welcome Iran as a productive partner of the Middle East. In the United States, a police officer has been killed and several other people are injured in an attack outside the Pentagon. The building was briefly put on lockdown as police responded to the incident. The Pentagon Force Protection Agency said the incident occurred at a public bus stop outside the Pentagon's building in Virginia. The head of Pentagon's police force declined to speak on a motive for the attack. However, he said the FBI is assisting in the investigation. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he has ordered the half-mast on flags on the Pentagon building to honor the victim. Brazil has once again logged over 1,200 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 32,000 new cases. Globally, the death toll from the virus has surpassed 4.2 million, with more than 199 million infections. More in this report. As millions of people have been fully vaccinated in Chile, the real-world data on the effectiveness on a number of vaccines has started pouring in. China's Sinovac has turned out to be 58.5% effective, while Pfizer is 87.7% and AstraZeneca 68.7%. In the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued a new moratorium on evictions that would last until the 3rd of October. COVID-19 hospitalizations are also surging across the country, and medics are warning that overwhelming majority of patients are unvaccinated. New York City has become the first major U.S. city to require proof of COVID-19 vaccination at restaurants, gyms, and other businesses. Meanwhile, health authorities in northern Mexico have vaccinated hundreds of migrants living in makeshift tents.
I got the vaccine to avoid taking risks because there are no sanitary conditions here or anything. That is why I got the jab to avoid being exposed to illnesses. There are no sanitary conditions at all. One here is desperate because you never know when you will be able to cross. At least with this jab, I am slightly calmer.
A new study has found that fully vaccinated people have an around 50 to 60% reduced risk of infection from the Delta variant. In France, health officials activated an emergency plan, or Corsica Island, as the fourth wave of COVID-19 spreads across the country. Over in Australia, Queensland State has warned that lockdown in Brisbane might be extended if people flout the restrictions. Australia also recorded its youngest death from the virus as a man in his 20s died in Sydney.
And thirdly, very sadly, a male in his 20s passed away at home with COVID from southwestern Sydney overnight. Obviously, our deepest condolences to his family and loved ones. But it demonstrates again how this disease is lethal, how it affects people of all ages. Unfortunately, the gentleman wasn't vaccinated, hadn't had any dose of the vaccine.
Many places in China have ramped up epidemic control to curb the spread of the recent resurgence of COVID-19. In India, health officials say the second wave of COVID-19 is still not over in the country. Meanwhile, Thailand has reported its record daily deaths and cases since the pandemic began. In Pakistan, COVID-19 has claimed 46 more lives in the last 24 hours, pushing the toll over 23,500. The health ministry said over 4,700 people tested positive overnight as the tally exceeds 1,047,000. It said more than 945,000 people have recovered so far. However, more than 3,800 are in critical condition. Meanwhile, more than 33 million vaccine doses have been administered across the country, and 6.9 million have been fully vaccinated. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, rebels have killed at least 16 people weeks after taking them hostage in the restive Ituri province. Local authorities say that the Allied Democratic Forces knifed hostages to death along a main highway near Ido. At a public meeting, Ituri's military governor said helicopters and other military personnel with trucks and munitions have reached the site. The government has placed the region under siege since May to step up the fight against the armed groups. The ADF is the deadliest of the armed groups in the region and has been active in the eastern Congo for the last 30 years. At least 41 people have died in a road accident in south-central Mali's city of Zambugu. The Transport Ministry says a truck carrying goods and market workers collided with a passenger bus. The ministry said 33 others are injured in the collision near the town of Sigu. The authorities said that the truck's driver lost control after the tire burst and the vehicle swerved into the path of the bus. The force of the crash sheared off the front section of the bus and scattered dead tree across the road. In the U.S. state of California, the largest wildfire has exploded again after burning for nearly 3 weeks in remote mountains. Officials have warned that hot and dry weather would increase the risk of new fires across much of the state. Strong winds stroked the Dixie Fire, which grew over 1,000 square kilometers across Palmas and Butte counties. Forestry and Fire Protection Department CAL FIRE said crews and heavy equipment shifted from other areas as the fire moved towards Greenville. At least 3,000 homes are threatened by the blaze that has destroyed 67 houses since breaking out on the 14th of July. The Dixie Fire has already burned more than 253,000 acres and was 35% contained. Meanwhile, the authorities said over 20,000 crew are battling 97 large wildfires in 13 states. In Lebanon, musicians from various genres came together to pay tribute to Beirut blast victims ahead of its first anniversary. Details in this report. Dozens gathered in Beirut for a musical tribute to the victims of the city's port explosion. The blast had killed over 200 people, injured thousands, and destroyed large swaths of the city. Attendees listened to a meditation-like poem recital and live performed music as they held candles.
We are gathering here tonight as a tribute to the victims who died in the explosion. We wanted to be gathered all together as a community in songs, in meditation, with the families of the victims and Beirut community, to all remember and never forget to remain one soul and demand justice.
One of the biggest non-nuclear explosions ever was caused by a massive quantity of ammonium nitrate left at the port since 2013. Even a year later after the blast, no senior official has been brought to account, angering many Lebanese.
Beirut has been suffering for the past year with no joy nor hope. Togetherly, Beirut came up with this initiative and concert to remember those who passed away and bring a little life to the city. This tears has always been a comfort zone for the city. We surely want to come and be present to prove we are here.
A local investigation is stalling as requests by the lead judge to lift immunity and question top officials are hampered. The catastrophic incident occurred when Lebanon was already suffering a deep economic crisis that has worsened in the last year. The Hong Kong team behind celebrity humanoid robot Sophia is launching a new prototype, Grace. It has designed to interact with the elderly and those isolated by the COVID-19 pandemic. More in this report.
Hi, Grace. Thank you, Sophia.
Dressed in a blue nurse's uniform, Grace has Asian features, collar-length brown hair, and a thermal camera to take your temperature and measure your responsiveness. She uses artificial intelligence to diagnose a patient and can speak English, Mandarin, and Cantonese.
Let's see what your smile looks like. Okay, yeah. Look, or sad. Oh, yes.
I can do all kinds of things for elderly people. I can visit with people and brighten their day with social stimulation, entertain and help guide exercise, but also can do talk therapy, take bio readings and help healthcare providers assess their health and deliver treatments.
Grace's resemblance to a healthcare professional and capacity for social interaction is aimed at relieving the burden of frontline hospital staff overwhelmed during the pandemic.
Such socially isolated individuals during COVID with a lot of negative thoughts and the mental states, if they can get help through deployment of these social robots in their intimate settings, I think certainly it has a positive impact in the society. So yes, I think we have been fundamentally and forever changed as a world due to COVID.
Awakening Health has announced mass production of a beta version of Grace by August. Officials say the cost of making the robot, now akin to luxury car pricing, will decrease once the company is manufacturing tens or hundreds of thousands of units.
Nearly 6 decades ago, France's prehistoric lacrosse caves were made off limits, but now visitors will be again able to enjoy the tour inside, the only time in virtual reality. More in this report. The Lacoste Cave Network, discovered in 1940 by a boy whose dog fell down a hole, contains paintings of animals, human figures, and abstract signs that date back as far as 17,000 years. It was closed to the public in 1963 after the carbon dioxide, heat, and humidity of nearly 2,000 visitors a day began damaging the paintings. But now, thanks to virtual reality, the caves are back in view.
At the start of the project, we acquired a set of 3D data of the Lascaux cave collected during several digitalization campaigns. This data was then integrated into the software that we developed here in this research lab. And using this data and the software, we built the different steps of this visit.
From July 8th, groups of 6 people wearing virtual reality headsets will be able to take a 45-minute tour through the 235-meter-long cave network, dubbed the Sistine Chapel of the prehistoric era.
The interest of this visit is to show things that cannot be easily reproduced in a printout, notably 2 sectors that are still unseen by the public. The well sector that is entirely reproduced, and most importantly, the Felines Gallery and the Felines Cabinet, which even when the actual cave was open to the public, no one could access because you needed to find your way through very narrow passages.
In 1979, several decorated caves of the Vézère Valley, including the Lacoste Cave, were added to the UNESCO World Heritage Sites list. Shares in the Asia-Pacific have edged up as traders mirrored overnight gains on Wall Street during another busy earnings week. Investors also reacted to a private survey report that showed accelerating Chinese services activity growth in July. Seoul's Kospi has jumped over 1%, leading the gains. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has also ascended 1%, while shares in mainland China have gained close to 1%. Australia's ASX 200 has edged up marginally. However, Japan's Nikkei 225 has dipped under the flat line. In the Tokyo Olympics, the United States, Brazil, and Japan are among others to capture gold medals on the 12th day of the Games. China leads the medal standings with 32 golds, followed by the United States with 25 and hosts Japan on 20. More on the Games in this report. Day 12 of the Games, American Sydney McLaughlin bags gold medal after breaking her own world record in the women's 400-meter hurdles, finishing in 51.46 seconds. Brazil's Ana Marcela Cunha won gold in women's open water swimming after taking control of the race in the final lap. Japan's Sakura Yosozumi clinched the women's park skating board gold, leading her country 1-2 on the event's Olympic debut. Pakistan's Arshad Nadeem makes history for his country by directly qualifying for the final of the javelin throw competition. Nadeem is the country's only hope of salvaging a medal on Saturday after he topped Group B with a throw of 85.16 meters. Defending champion Britain's Liam Heath posts Olympic best time to advance to the semi-finals of the men's kayak single 200-meter. Meanwhile, the Netherlands have qualified for the women's hockey finals for a 5th straight time at the Tokyo Games. The Dutch notched up an inspiring 5-1 victory over 2016 Rio Olympic champions Britain. They will play either Argentina or India in the finals. We are joined by Ali Mehdi, a cricket expert speaking to us from Islamabad. Ali, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now, Ali, Pakistan has won the Rain Rabbit series against the West Indies. What are the key takeaways from this series for the Green Caps?
Well, there aren't many takeaways because there was only one match played. This series was originally supposed to be a 5-match series, which got reduced to 4 matches because of the COVID problems which took place in the West Indies. So out of the 4 matches, there were only 1 match which actually took place. 3 got rained off. But I would say that the one thing takeaway from that match was that actually Pakistan actually batted okay in difficult conditions. They bounced back from the series loss against England, and in that one match, what they did is in difficult conditions, they actually managed to get a victory, a competitive victory against the world champions. So all round, it was a very good game. Pakistan played against the West Indies, and I think going forward for the World Cup, which is taking place in October, I think they're going to be much more confident, especially with the 2 home series against New Zealand and England.
Ali, why is Pakistan's success rate less in other formats of the game?
I actually think that it's because, the T20 format is the format which actually, which has only about 20 overs. There are 120 balls in it. And in that, it's more or less, if you have a couple of key performers, 1 or 2 key performers, that can actually win you the game. It's more to win the longer formats, 50 over or test series, you actually need a lot of players to actually perform. So Pakistan has been consistent in this format because they specialize in this format. They've won the World T20 once in 2009, and ever since then they've been consistently in the top 3 or 4. So Pakistan have always specialized on this front and have key players who can actually perform very good in this format, which they have done since the inception of the game in 2007.
So Ali, do you expect any major changes in the Pakistani side for the Test series?
For the Test series, I think our Test squad has already been announced. We have the likes of Azhar Ali coming in, Sajid Ali will be there, Noman will also be there, and other than that, Fawad Alam will be there. So I think Pakistan's and Abid Ali will be back too. So I think Pakistan's Test squad, who played against the home series against South Africa, against Zimbabwe, they'll actually be fired up for this, and they should actually put up a very good competitive series against the West Indies, who actually have been doing pretty well in the red ball format at home.
Ali Mehdi, thank you so much for speaking to Indus News. Now moving on, in cricket, Bangladesh beat Australia by 23 runs in the first T20 in Dhaka. This is Bangladesh's first ever win in the T20s against the Kangaroos. Australia were all out for 108 in reply to the 132-run target. Mitchell Marsh top scored with 45 runs, while Mitchell Stark added 14 for the visitors. Nasim Ahmed was the pick of the bowlers for his 4-for-19. Both teams will next lock horns today in the second T20. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.